But let's get into the Northman review. So before we get into spoilers, the Northman is another entry into an extensive Viking catalog that's a lot of Viking content that's out there right now for some reason. Netflix has like 2 or 3 Viking shows. I watched The Last Kingdom, not realizing that it was another Viking show. I'm like, holy cow, there's so many Viking things. But this film, The Northman, is a film that's based off a Scandinavian legend. Although I will say that it's more in the setup than anything else, because based on what I read about that legend, like, it's very different from what you get in this film. Also, Shakespeare did base Hamlet off that legend as well, but I feel like the Northman is closer to Hamlet than it is to the original version of that mythology.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. This was directed by Robert Eggers, and it follows Amleth as he attempts to exact revenge against the uncle who killed his father and kidnapped his mother. That is not a spoiler, by the way, because that is in the trailer. So it is very much something that they're very upfront with. I do want to get into a few facts about the film before we review it. A few facts about this movie, Josh, and you could probably add to some of these facts because you're a Robert Eggers fan, but this is the 3rd Robert Eggers feature film, which is remarkable for the fact of how talented this guy is. The Witch, his first film, is a horror movie that had a budget of $4 million. Now, that may sound like a lot of money to you, but in the world of Hollywood, $4 million for a movie is nothing. Yeah. And by the way, it made 10 times that amount in theaters, which is kind of why he's becoming the golden boy, so to speak, in Hollywood, although we'll get into this a little bit more. His second film, The Lighthouse, is almost indescribable. I'll go with mythological, psychological thriller as the genre, but even that is like not the correct description for what that is. It is a bizarre genre of film.
It is really bizarre. And I also think like it didn't do as well, right, in theaters.
It did not. It had a budget of $11 million. But it made 18. So it was still profitable. Like, it was still a profitable film. Now, The Northman is Eggers' first studio-backed films. First of his studio-backed films. I'm sure he'll do many more. And it came with a $90 million budget. So he's upped the budget by, a factor of 9. A little under 9. And as of yesterday, The Northman has only made 31 million in the US and 58 million worldwide. So the travesty of this, in my opinion, Josh Taylor, is that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness has made close to $300 million just domestically and almost 700 million internationally. And I say that's a tragedy because The Northman is a way better film than Doctor Strange is, in my opinion. And I say that as someone, of course, all these people who listen to me on this show know that I love the MCU, but this is a phenomenal film. So how about we get into a review of The Northman, Josh? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm stoked to talk about this film.
Cool. So we'll stay spoiler-free for a little bit. So I'd love to hear, what did you think of it, Josh? No spoilers, but what did you think of The Northman, and should people go see this film?
So the thing about Robert Eggers, if you've never seen a Robert Eggers film, the thing to love most about his films is that he captures a place and time so well. The Witch was a film that the dialogue fit the 1600s, 1700s, and so it wasn't for everybody because of the dialogue. It felt very Shakespearean in that regard. And the lighting, the music that went along with it, everything that was atmospheric about that film felt old. And because it's kind of a horror film, it felt a little weird. You didn't really know what was going on. The same thing can be said about The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse becomes this psychedelic, wild thing. Like as you're watching these characters fall into their own psychosis, you yourself are watching, and you would believe that you have some kind of psychosis. It's weird. But this film does the same thing. It creates a really great atmosphere. Even though it's not based on Hamlet, a lot of people are going to make that, assumption that like, oh, this is just like Hamlet, even if they don't know the legend. And I think a part of that comes from also the style of dialogue that he chooses for this film feels very Shakespearean still. And the way that it's shot, the color grading of the film, everything feels like you're in the North Atlantic.
Yeah.
It's a beautifully shot. It feels old. It feels gritty. He nailed the atmosphere. He nailed what it's like. I mean, I don't know what it was like to live in Viking days.
Oh, come on, Josh. You're a Viking.
I
I can see
I
you're a
know.
berserker just by looking at you.
Right, exactly. But like it did feel like the brutality of what life was like at that time
Yeah.
made sense in the film.
Yeah.
So to me, the fun of going to see a Robert Eggers film is being able to live with these characters.
Right.
I don't think that he's a strong writer of protagonists you really want to root for. You know,
Right.
like nobody in this film was. I was like, yeah, I'm so excited for them. Um, but like,
And we are going to get into that very, very deeply, by the way. So,
yeah, but
yeah.
I do enjoy sitting and watching one of his films and like coming out of it going like, I don't think I could have lived during that time period. I would be dead now.
Well, the reason I made that joke about you being a berserker is because you're one of the most kind-hearted, gentle
Timid.
people that I know. No, I wouldn't call you timid. I wouldn't. Anybody who puts themselves out on a podcast all the time, I would not call timid. I would
Sure.
say that you're just very chill, very mild-mannered, like very interested
Yeah.
in a good conversation. And these people aren't. These people are aggressive. They're crazy. They don't even talk about stuff very much. I mean, it's insane. Um, by the way, a couple things to pick up on that I learned in preparing for this show and researching some things. Robert Eggers he describes himself as someone who is interested in history, spirituality, and mythology, who just happens to make films. So
Yeah.
you can see as you talk about like the kinds of movies that he's making here, he has a very rooted interest in being historically accurate to the point where he in The Witch, which I've never seen, by the way, it's the only movie of his I haven't seen yet.
It's a really great film.
I'm just not a horror guy, so I'm like, do I want to
I
put
get it.
myself through 3 days of anxiety for just to watch this guy's movie? But one of the things he said was he uses dialogue that is almost literally taken from the writings of people at the time.
At the time period, yeah.
Yeah. So like and actually he played a clip of one of the female characters is actually saying almost identically what a Puritan person of that time frame had written down. It was a male, so it was a different kind of character and all kind of different thing about a different kind of situation. But so he's very interested in being as immersive in that regard as possible. Obviously, he loves Shakespeare, obviously, right? Because it just seeps into these films. I will say a couple things. I totally agree with you that it is visually gorgeous. I don't think that I have ever been as impressed visually with a filmmaker as I've been with Robert Eggers, as except in maybe some unique places where I think Zack Snyder gets there as well. Like the way that he displays activity on screen is interesting just because of the way he imagined it in his head. And it's striking. It's like he was complaining because he filmed The Witch in digital, and he's filmed The Northman in on film. And the way that his brain works from a technical standpoint is very unique. So this film is visually gorgeous. It is, by the way, what I thought The Green Knight was going to be. And The Green Knight I was ultimately disappointed in because I'm very I used to be a really big fan of Arthurian lore. So I would dive into Arthurian lore. I wrote a couple stories about Arthurian lore, and I thought The Green Knight was trying to do what Robert Eggers accomplished in The Northman, basically, is how I kind of felt about that. Extraordinary acting in this. Anna Taylor-Joy was discovered by. Obviously, she was talented to begin with, but he's the first person to put her in a feature. So she was in The
Yeah.
Witch.
Yep.
She's outstanding in this. I think Alexander Skarsgård as Amleth is outstanding. Nicole Kidman, who you've never seen in a role like this, like
Not at
you've
all.
never seen Nicole Kidman do this. She's phenomenal. And probably if I were gonna say like, hey, look, does this movie deserve any sort of Oscar consideration? I would have said Nicole Kidman is supporting is like almost like a lock for me. I mean,
Really?
yeah, just because she's not a major character in this. Let's be fair
Yeah, I
about
mean, it would be
that.
a supporting role for sure.
Yes, but I've never like I did you see the movie where she plays Lucille Ball?
I have not yet. No, but
Okay,
she's having like a really interesting. It's not a comeback because I wouldn't say that she went
right.
away, but she's having like a resurgence
Yes.
um, in roles that I would have never put her in. But at the same time, she's. I mean, I believe she's had like quite a bit of plastic surgery.
Yeah.
So the roles that she was getting, I don't think are there for her anymore,
Yeah.
which is fine
Right.
because I think she's getting way cooler roles on the
Way
other
better
side of
roles.
it.
Yeah, way better roles.
Yeah.
Well, she was great in that movie, and she got a supporting. I would tell you that what she does in The Northman, I think, is more impressive than what she did in that movie. So for
Okay.
me, just because of who she is, I mean, we're talking about what I expect to see Nicole Kidman as is goes back all the way to like Far and Away. That's what I expect to see her doing.
Yeah.
What she does in The Northman is not that. Um, Several of the scenes I think in this film are mind-blowingly powerful scenes, which are just great. You mentioned this, but his ability to light a scene.
Ugh.
Do you know there's a style of painting wherein the actual light source is not the light source. I don't know what this is called because I'm not an art historian, but usually they will like put a light source like in a portion of the painting where there is like, let's just say that there's a painting of like the nativity, right? And it's like the little baby Jesus is the light source, like that kind of thing, where it's
Yeah.
like there's shadow in the background, but clearly like the baby would never be the source of light. That style of painting, which is very dynamic, is like what you're watching when you're watching a Robert Eggers film. You're like, I'm zoned in on the thing I'm supposed to be zoned in on. It is. The title of this YouTube video is beautifully, brutally beautiful, right? Like it's brutally beautiful. It's not beautiful inherently because I'm sitting by a stream feeling peaceful. I feel very uncomfortable with the visuals, but you're so compelled to watch them. And so the way he
Yeah.
uses lighting, I think, is just phenomenal. There's a scene where it is literally a fire and a close up of is an extended scene, so this is not the entire scene, but there's a fire and there's a close up of Amleth, and you're just like, there's nothing else going on the screen. This dude's looking at the camera, he's looking at me, and it's insane how much emotion and conflict there is just by a guy standing in front of the fire looking at me.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and I think that actually because he's filming actors looking directly at the camera, it does make you as an audience member almost it's almost participatory. You're like almost participating in the madness that is happening on the screen, right? You're like, whoa, I'm seeing what he's seeing, or she's seeing, or whatever. So I do think that this is also about spirituality and destiny and humanity, which we'll get into later when we start talking spoilers. I'm always down to talk about those kind of things. I will say that I do have one minor issue with the film, and it is about the premise of the film and whether or not we should. You alluded to this already, which is why I said we'll talk about it, and we will. But whether or not you should actually root for and or celebrate the protagonist or
Right.
condemn the protagonist, it's and I want to talk about that. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah, but I think Josh said it, like, don't go into this film thinking we're rooting for Iron Man. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not this kind of
I mean,
film.
here's the thing: you could root for someone in this movie, but by the end of this film, you might think very differently.
Exactly. Which is both awesome and presents some problems, I think, for modern day film. So what's your take? One of the best movies of 2022 thus far?
This is so. I wouldn't say you said it's your favorite, right? Or that it is your best of
So far,
2022.
so far of what I've seen, yes.
I would say it's top 5. I would not say. Here's what I would say about this film. I
Yeah.
feel the same way about this film that I felt about The Lighthouse and that I feel about The Witch.
Yeah.
I walked out of these films, all
Yeah.
of them, going, yeah, that was fun. Okay. I mean, not fun, but like I enjoyed seeing the film.
Right.
But like, especially The Witch was a film where like the more I sat and thought about it, the more I was like, this was a beautifully told story.
Yeah.
In every way. And The Lighthouse was a movie that I kind of, knowing Robert Eggers now, I knew what I was getting into a bit more. This film, I walked out going, okay, that was fun. And then like, as I sat on it, as I compared it to other mythologies, Shakespeare, literature in general, how like it is a classically told, perfect story.
Yeah.
Is it the best story ever? I mean, it's not really original. It is Hamlet, which, has been told a bunch of different times. But I did really, really enjoy it. I would say, yeah, top 5 for sure. It might sneak up more as the year goes on.
Okay. So what would you say? You say, what should I go see before I see The Northman?
I would say that everyone should see Everything Everywhere All at Once. That
I can't wait. Yeah.
Was so brilliant, so wonderful. But this film is, I think this film is one of those films that people are going to be surprised at the end of the year that like it either does get nominations for something or it doesn't at all.
Right. It's going to go one way or the other.
And either way, people are going to be surprised. They'll be like, oh, I forgot that movie came out. Or they'll be like, The Northman got robbed. What the heck?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's my favorite film because I haven't seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, nor have I seen The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I haven't seen that either, and I think that I will probably enjoy those two films quite a bit. So I'm saying it's my favorite film of 2022, having seen very few films in 2022 and having been slightly disappointed in most of the ones that I've seen thus far.